Alright, students, we're going to begin a project making a clay mug. We're going to use the slab hand building method. Alright, your first step is you're going to get a piece of clay, and with clay it really is important that you wedge up the clay. Any clay that you get, sometimes it's thrown in the bag there in multiple pieces, and you want it a uniform consistency. You also want to eliminate any air bubbles that may have the potential to blow out and try to make their way out. We're going to go through some trouble to make our mug, and we don't want any problems that occur with air bubbles. Alright, once you do that, then you're going to work to flatten it a little bit, and you can do that with the palms of your hands to flatten it. You can also slap it against the side of the at an angle, and it'll start to stretch and flatten. Alright, once you do that, you can also begin to roll it out. It is easier to have it somewhat flat before you roll it out. You're going to use the rolling pin. I do also recommend these stilts that I have over there. I have a couple of different thicknesses. I'm using the smallest of them. I do want kind of a thin-edged mug, and so I'm going to basically just roll. The sticks kind of stop my rolling pin and keep it in a uniform width. Also, I would suggest cleaning off the rolling pins. I know sometimes clay will get stuck to those, and they do kind of will shed their dry clay onto your nice surface here. Alright, well, I have some patterns also for clay mugs for the size that you're going to need. But first, I would suggest trying out some different textures. I've got a lot of things available for you to use to create some sort of nice design or texture. I've got kind of a bin of tools like this that would work nice, and you can create some nice patterns, textures, and things like that. Something of interest. These are kitchen tools oftentimes, but they make really great clay tools. I also have rubber stamps. I have a lot of assortment. I would suggest any of these ideas, try them out first, see how well they transfer to the clay. I also have bisque stamps that students have made, and you can try those out. I have any assortment of things. So we've got shells, we've got different tools that might create an interesting texture. I also would recommend to maybe even look at the bottom of your shoe, see what kind of texture you might have there. Might be something interesting that you might want to add. I also have things like letter stamps as well as pasta letters. With the pasta letters, you can press them right into your clay, and you can leave them there. Don't feel like you have to pick those out of there at all. Press them in securely. If they fall out, that's fine, but in the end, they will burn off when they're in the kiln, so you don't even have to worry about those. But look over my stamps. I've got a bucket of different things, some texture plates that work really nicely too, that you can create some interesting texture. Kind of figure it out, design what you would like your clay mug to look like. Now, let's say you get started and you don't like the way it's looking. Feel free to use a rib to clean that surface up again. It is easy to get rid of what you created. So I've got ribs like this, and in most cases you can erase some idea you had that you changed your mind on. Okay, roll it back out again if you need to. Alright, once you've created that, you're going to cut this out to the size that we need. And I would just use a knife or a pen tool, any of those kinds of tools, and cut out your design. Cut out your mug shape. Alright, we've reached that. Now you can pull away some of the extra. I am going to actually leave a little bit of clay here because I'm going to use it. Alright, so I've got my mug, and this is the thickness that it is, and that is a nice thickness. I would suggest not going too thin because we do need some substance to it. Now I have a handful of these that can be used to kind of keep the shape of your mug, and they happen to fit just about perfect. This one's just a little bit small, so I might have to stretch it just a little bit. And that can be easily done by rolling it out just a little bit more and stretching it. Okay, get these things out of the way. Alright, stretch, stretch, stretch. Slap it maybe a couple times down. and it will fit. Now we want to make sure we attach this well. I like this side on the outside. Now we have a couple options. When I mentioned the texture, this is really soft clay, and we need the clay to be soft when we're assembling it like this. If it's leather hard, there's going to be a tendency for it to crack and not bend as easily as we would like it to. When we wrap our projects up, they will be drying out ever so slightly from day to day. So you want to do any bending and forming while it's still rather moist. All right, so I'm going to score and slip, and this is really important as clay shrinks when it dries, so it needs to be securely joined together. And so this is a standard practice, is to score the surface, which is just roughing it up and adding some moisture either with a spray bottle sponge, or I also have buckets of what's called slip, and that's kind of a moist clay water. Okay, score, slip, join. All right, then use one of your great tools that you may have to join these together. And you can use that handy dandy rib to kind of really smooth things out. Now if you do find that you mess up your design that you put on here, you can at this point, especially with it on the mold, you can add them back or work with them a little bit, press them back in a little bit, re-stamp them. All right, this is nice loose on my form here, which makes it kind of nice. All right, let's see if this is going to fit. Just about. Okay, I'm going to create a bottom. Use some of your extra clay that you have there. I'm going to flatten this just out to widen it just a little bit, and this is going to be the bottom. All right, same procedure of scoring and slipping to join the bottom to this mug. And I'm just basically going to remove some of this extra out of the way. All right, it's going to fit on there just like so. So I'm going to trim it away. If you have a little extra on the edges, that actually works well too, to kind of help give you a little extra clay to join it up a little bit. All right, I'm going to score. And you can use a fork, you can use a pen tool, you can use this knife tool, any of those types of things to score the bottom of your mug. All right, score this as well. Give it some nice slip, some slimy goo, and join them up. It's nice to have this form because now as I'm joining it, still keeps its shape. Now I would take a tool here and work on joining this all together. Work that all the way around. If you do find some fine cracks and things like that in your mug from just forming it and shaping it around this form, take that rib and clean those things up. The real talent here is in the time that is taken. Sometimes students think they're not natural artists, but really a lot of times the natural artists, quote unquote natural artists, are the ones that are willing just to take a little extra time to refine and make the item look good. All right, and so talent, we put a lot of stock in that too, but sometimes talent is just hard work. Okay, so I would also secure the seam on the inside, and sometimes you can create kind of a little bitty mini snake to press into that seam on the inside. That might give it a little extra support, and then blend that in. So taking your tool, and this is a little bit trickier because it's on the inside, blend that in. In some cases you might not need the snake. Just see how secure it seems, because you really don't want it to come apart. You do want a nice mug that will hold together and that perhaps you can drink out of it. Now this is the pattern that we used, and I have had students make theirs a little bit taller. Feel free to make either it taller or make a pattern piece that's a little bit bigger, and that is fine with me. I like the students that take initiative and come up with their own variation. That's always good. It's creativity. All right, so secure also in the inside bottom. Make sure that seam is looking good. Take your tool and run that around the bottom and smooth that out as well. All right, so we've gotten this far, and now we're going to need a handle. Make sure your surface is even, and sometimes just tapping it onto the surface of your mat will, or your board, will kind of flatten that out. You can kind of use the paddle. The paddle is really a handy tool. Once you've got it to the shape that you want, you may want to put your form back in and give it some taps. Maybe form the bottom just a little bit. Give it a foot, kind of a rim there at the bottom. The paddle is kind of a great tool, especially if you find that your shape is starting to get a little bit misshapen. It works out really well. Now, if you decided that you didn't decorate it right away with some of the stamps, these things work really nicely when the clay is soft. But another option is when the clay gets just a little bit firmer, and this is another one I did yesterday. The clay is just a little bit more firm, and it is more conducive for any kind of carving. So if you decided you wanted to carve in a design using some of the tools, taking away or drawing in or stamping in your name or something like that, you certainly can, and that works a little bit better when it's leather hard. All right, we're also going to be making a handle. And a handle is as easy as can be, in that you can just as well make it out of slabs. Now, I made mine this way, with kind of a joined here and here. There are lots of different options. I do have the instructions for this project in our booklets, and so they've got a couple examples as well. That might be a nice option. All right, so measure out and decide what size handle that you want. I would suggest making it a little bit longer than you expect, and then cutting it away to the size desired. All right, same process happens. Is I would suggest using your sponge to smooth out any areas. If you're going to be using and drinking out of this mug, you do want edges to be smoothed out nicely. Any ridges that are there when it's clay will be there also, even harder and sharper when they're fired. Okay, so adding in your clay. Now, if your handle seems to be a little bit droopy and difficult to attach, I would let it sit, maybe wrap it up till the next time in the shape that you want, and then adhere it. So if it seems like it's sagging and it won't stay and it's difficult to work with, I would suggest let it sit wrapped up just so it's just a smidge more hard, or towards the end of class maybe it's firmed up just enough for you to attach it. And just as we mentioned earlier, score and slip. So I would suggest cutting it to the size that you want, adding a little scoring. Be generous with the slip and attaching. All right, and then last step, once that's attached and that's part of your mug, I would let it sit over there to dry. You may decide, and I oftentimes recommend this, is wrap it up today. Even if you think you're finished, wrap it up today. Next time it'll be a little bit more firmer. Take it out, look at it some more, decide when it's firmer, sometimes taking a rib to it to smooth out even any other excess, refining any areas, or even just taking a sponge over it and smoothing it out, maybe deciding to trim off the rim and things like that to kind of get it even. You can do any perfecting of it after it's been leather hard and sitting over there. So wrap it up today. Make sure also that you have your initials in it, and you certainly can use the letter pasta. Add your initials to it, and those, like I mentioned, will just fire off, and go away. All right, so we'll let these dry, and we'll loosely let them dry slowly so that there isn't any cracking. And then once you're all done, you can clean up, and it'll take about a week, and I'll fire them, and then we'll go about coming to painting them with some glaze. After the video's over, you can ask any questions.